The government of Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who had been in power in Hungary for 16 years, has finally collapsed. As a result, it seems that the political landscape in Europe will change quite significantly. Let's take a proper look at this topic today. Let's get right into it. On April 12th, a general election was held in Hungary. But first, let's take a look at the results of this election. The opposition party, TISA Party, won a total of 138 seats, accounting for 67.34%. The former ruling parties, Fidesz Hungarian Civic Alliance and the Christian Democratic People's Party, together won 55 seats, accounting for 27.64%. The Our Homeland movement secured 6 seats, making up 3.02%. As you can see, Fidesz Hungarian Civic Alliance, Prime Minister Viktor Orban's party, won just 55 seats and suffered a complete collapse. Even the opposition TISA Party won a landslide with 138 seats, far exceeding the 5-seat threshold. This has major implications. First of all, after the victory was confirmed, the leader of the TISA Party, Péter Magyar, stated that the Hungarian people have made history once again exactly 23 years after the referendum on joining the European Union was held. He also stressed that Hungary will be a strong EU and NATO ally. Prime Minister Viktor Orban congratulated the winning party and briefly admitted defeat. This Hungarian general election drew significant international attention for obvious reasons. Prime Minister Viktor Orban has maintained power for 16 years since taking office in 2010, and he is the person who has changed the very structure of Hungarian politics. This is actually his second time leading Hungary, and he has ruled Hungary for a very long time. He introduced illiberal democracy, opting for a path unlike Western liberal democracy, and expanded his control over the judiciary, media, and administrative institutions. Especially in the media environment, a structure has formed where pro-government outlets dominate the market, and it has been said that critical voices have gradually lost their place. Civil society has frequently faced pressure for opposing government policies, and the international community has repeatedly noted Hungary's declining democracy. Some experts and politicians have called Prime Minister Orban a de facto authoritarian leader, or someone with dictatorial tendencies. This means that the concentration of power has intensified and institutional checks and balances have weakened. However, the key point of this incident is that a system that had been maintained for such a long time collapsed not through armed conflict or a coup, but through an election. Since an authoritarian regime was replaced by the people's choice, political circles worldwide, not just in Europe, must pay attention to this outcome. Additionally, those interested in international affairs likely know Hungary often acts so pro-Russian that some question if it's almost a Russian spy in Europe. Because of this, the EU was pushing for support to Ukraine, but Hungary opposed the EU at every turn, often appearing rebellious within the EU. Hungary also frequently showed opposition to sanctions against Russia. Because of this, there were even claims that the general election itself was a proxy war between the US, Russia, and the EU. However, just before the election, a series of fatal setbacks began to hit Viktor Orban one after another. The first incident was the release of records showing that the Hungarian foreign minister shared and discussed internal EU meeting details with the Russian side. This was more than a diplomatic mistake. It was a potential leak of state secrets that raised serious doubts among Hungarians about who the government truly serves. Because the Orban government was already criticized for its pro-Russian stance, these records have become a bombshell, shaking the administration's very identity. On top of that, the international situation also turned against Orban. As military tensions rose in the Middle East, the energy market was greatly shaken, and the impact hit the Hungarian economy directly. The rise in energy prices led to higher prices overall, and as the cost of living soared, the situation escalated to the brink of explosion. Amid a years-long recession, the view that people couldn't take it anymore spread quickly. Prime Minister Orban made a bold move by inviting J.D. Vance to Hungary to help with the campaign. This appeared to be strong diplomatic support. This strategy tried to rally conservatives by aligning with Donald Trump, but this proved entirely wrong. Meanwhile, anti-American sentiment was rising quickly across Europe. The Trump administration repeatedly pressured its allies by putting America first, and especially with blatant territorial remarks like the Greenland issue, doubts were spreading across Europe about whether the United States could still be considered a trustworthy partner. Hungary followed this trend. In this climate, Vice President J.D. Vance's direct visit to join the election campaign had the opposite effect. From the perspective of the Hungarian people, it appeared as if a foreign politician was interfering in their national election, and this became an opportunity for all the accumulated dissatisfaction with the government to erupt at once. Especially among young people and centrist voters, there was strong resentment about why the government was relying on outside forces, and this directly led to a decline in support for the ruling party. Orban's side expected that emphasizing their relationship with Trump would rally their supporters, but in reality, the opposite result occurred. Their attempt to boost approval ratings backfired, quickly shifting the election landscape against them. These trends were evident in voter turnout. About 74% voted in this Hungarian general election, the highest in Hungary's history. This means that voters' anger and their strong desire for change were powerfully expressed in this election. This election motivated usually apathetic voters to go to the polls, resulting in a government shakeup and the collapse of the Orban administration. After Hungary's general election, many European countries sent messages. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said Hungary has chosen Europe. She was pleased that a country returned to Europe. French President Macron also said that the result shows how much the Hungarian people value the EU's principles and Hungary's role in Europe. Prime Minister Keir Starmer called it a historic moment for European democracy. The TISA party, which changed the government, repeatedly stressed during the election that it would fundamentally shift Hungary's diplomatic course. In particular, they emphasized as a key pledge that they would resolve conflicts with the European Union and return to a cooperative relationship. This was essentially a declaration to end Hungary's confrontational diplomacy with the EU that has continued for more than 10 years. At the center of this is Peter Magyar. He stated that he would return Hungary to the center of Europe and also expressed his intention to normalize relations with NATO. These remarks are being received quite positively within Europe. Until now, under the Viktor Orban government, Hungary has repeatedly put the brakes on major EU policies. In particular, Hungary has effectively acted as a brake on issues such as support for Ukraine and sanctions against Russia, and because of this, there have been frequent delays in decision-making within the EU. However, with this change of government, there is growing hope that this structure could change. If Hungary no longer holds things back, military and financial support at the EU level could move forward much more quickly. This could also be a very important change from Ukraine's perspective. Another important issue is the relationship with Russia. During the Orban administration, Hungary was considered the most pro-Russian country in Europe. Even with a new government, quickly reducing dependence on Russia or ending pro-Russian policies won't be easy. A rapid transition will be hard. We will likely see less open support for Russia or public obstruction of EU policies than before, though some variables remain. There is still a certain degree of anti-Ukraine sentiment within Hungary. Because of historical conflicts and issues related to ethnic minorities, it is not easy for Hungary to suddenly shift to fully supporting Ukraine. The new government will likely focus on cooperating with the EU and balancing domestic public opinion instead of fully supporting Ukraine, and will opt for a compromise-based diplomatic strategy. As such, Hungary's diplomatic direction is clearly showing signs of change, but the speed and scope of that change can vary greatly depending on future political situations, economic conditions, and the international climate. At this stage, the main point is the direction has changed, and over time, it will become clearer how far these changes will go. The country that is most uncomfortable with the results of this Hungarian general election is Russia. Until now, Hungary has been virtually the only country within the European Union to represent Russia's position. In particular, Hungary has maintained its dependence on Russian gas and oil when it comes to energy issues, continuously putting the brakes on the EU's sanctions against Russia, and has repeatedly hindered support for Ukraine. Thanks to Hungary's presence, Russia had a kind of buffer zone within Europe, but with this change of government, that structure has started to unravel. As the new government has made its pro-European stance clear, from Russia's perspective, the channel through which it could exert influence within Europe is likely to be significantly weakened. Especially because, under the EU's decision-making structure, if even one country opposes, sanctions or support measures often get blocked. Hungary's change is not just a simple shift in diplomatic direction, but a variable that can directly affect actual policy outcomes. All of these developments are quite a painful change from Russia's perspective. This is because they are losing a key foothold within Europe that indirectly advance their interests. Thus, this election is viewed as more than a change in one country's government. It's seen as potentially disrupting Russia's entire European strategy.